Yoni Wonderman, Compliance Edge Knives, Tips for Aspiring Knife Makers and Business Startups. In this episode, I sit down with Yoni Wonderman, talented knife maker and owner of Compliance Edge Knives. Yoni shares his journey into knife making, which began as a hobby and evolved into a business. Here are some of the key takeaways and intriguing points we covered. A lifelong passion. Yoni's journey into knife making began with a simple picture of a knife blank sent by a friend, sparking a passion that coincided perfectly with his college graduation. First job, first love. Knife making is Yoni's first real job, diving headfirst into entrepreneurship just 2 months before graduating college. Crafting a business. Yoni spent 6 to 9 months honing his skills before forming an LLC, with initial clients from the jiu-jitsu community and eventually Tier 1 Special Forces operators, SWAT and police customers. Social media savvy. Early adoption of Instagram played a crucial role in Yoni's success, helping him showcase his work and gain followers quickly. Investing in technology. Transitioning from custom knife making to larger production runs, Yoni invested in CNC machinery and tool classes to learn programming. Learning the ropes. From accounting to web design, Yoni emphasizes the importance of acquiring various business skills, learning the value of financial management through experience. Yoni's passion for knife making and entrepreneurship is truly inspiring, and his journey offers valuable insights for anyone navigating their own path in business and following their passion. You can find Yoni at the show notes below. Click on the links, complianceedgeknives.com, and on Insta at compliance_edge. Thanks for watching. I'm Damien Porter, former New Zealand Special Forces operator, subject matter expert from HowNotToDieGuy.com. And you're listening to my Straight Talk Mind and Muscle podcast, sponsored by State, the ultimate daily formula for optimum hormone health, stress management, energy, and performance. 100% natural and clinically proven ingredients. Provides everything you need to raise your game in a convenient, gut-friendly capsule. And my new sponsor, Michael Mason of the Mason Survival Protocol. Links for my former shows are in the show notes below. Thanks for watching. And we're live. Welcome to the Straight Talk Mind and Muscle podcast. Welcome to my guest again from the other side of the world over there in San Diego, USA, Yoni Wonderman.
Hey, how's it going?
Man, I say that I interview the best people in the world at what they do, but finally I have the person with the best name in the world. I love your surname. It's absolutely brilliant.
Thank you. Yeah. I've told many times, that I should incorporate it into my brand, have like some Wonderman knives or Wonder knives or something like that. And I probably missed the ball there, but thank you. Yeah, it's definitely interesting name. I think, I'm the actual only one in the world, at least that I can find with that exact name. So definitely different.
But your personality shines through in your social media, and also even just in the photo that you sent through, that it's also on your website, the About You page. So people listening now have already listened to the show notes introducing you, but Compliance Edge Knives, brilliant product, and it really does come through. Somehow, you're very positive. It's just very light and very interesting to watch. And social media, that's the way we portray ourselves to the world. So that's coming across really well, Yoni.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
Yeah, you're welcome. Now, 2014, you've been making knives for that long. I just before we started recording, I said I've had the honor of interviewing some knife makers. I had Daniel Winkler on and Chris Stroop on as well, which was great to have those guys talking about what they do, especially Daniel with the history he's got. What got you into knife making? And that's almost a decade now in what you're doing. What got you into making blades and then producing your own company?
Yeah, so I was always into making things my whole life, but the way that I got into making knives was literally a friend of mine just kind of one day texted me a picture of a knife blank and was like, I'm making a knife. Like, do you want to make a knife? And I was like, yes, that sounds awesome. And I don't remember what came first, if it was that conversation or the idea of I just randomly like had this idea in my head, like almost around the same time where I was thinking, I don't know what I want to do because I was just graduating college. And I was like, whatever I do though, when I'm done, I want to retire and make knives and get like a dog and work out of my garage whenever I'm done with whatever my career is. And then like my buddy sent me that picture. We just kind of started making knives, and then a couple months later I rented a house that had a garage so I could set up my own little shop in there, and I went to the pound and got a dog and just started making knives with my dog in my garage.
Oh
um
man.
and never looked back. That was 10 years ago. Luckily I just got into it young when I didn't have any expenses or responsibilities, so I was able to just grind it out for the a decade now. Just had my 10th anniversary this last week. So,
So is this your
yeah,
first job?
this is pretty much my first job. Yeah, I've never had any real job. I worked for my stepdad for a little bit when I was like, through high school and college. He had like an entertainment company, so I'd help with like sound and lighting and kind of stuff like that. And but yeah, I never had any real official job out of college. I started making knives, I think 2 months before I graduated college. So,
Wow, this would be great for the veterans out there and for the other entrepreneurs as well. Strangely enough, I'm on some
sure.
entrepreneur show coming up in a week or so. I don't know where it comes from, but you've literally organically become an entrepreneur, become you're the owner of your own company there. So talk us through from, your friend just throwing this blank out there, I want to make that, to actually growing a business. When did you start selling? What was the sort of broad brushstrokes on that, Yanni?
Sure. So I think I made knives for about, it was 6 to 9 months before I actually started like an LLC. But in terms of selling, it was fairly immediate. My friend was my jiu-jitsu coach,
Yeah.
so we had a lot of guys in the community that were training, and a lot of law enforcement, as well as military. And we had another friend who was really interested in it, and he was active duty law enforcement. He's retired military, um, and he was making knives with me, and we actually started the company together. And we did that for about maybe 2 months or so before he was just, he was active duty law enforcement. He didn't have the time to make knives all day, and he had a family, wife, kids,
Yeah.
all that. And I'm 22 years old with nothing but time, quite literally. Um, so he was originally getting most of our clients for the first few months,
Yeah.
because it was just guys from work. He would just, they were coming up with that. It was all custom, so drawing stuff out, we would make it, kind of deal. And then from there, within another month or two, found Instagram and started posting to Instagram. And
Yeah.
back then it was like TikTok is now. It was the Wild West. There was no algorithms or anything crazy like that. And you could just gain a following quick. And right place, right time. People like the knives. Just figured out how to make a website, start taking orders, and slowly grew it. And just over the years transitioned from, I've gone from smaller shops to slightly bigger to slightly a little bit bigger. And now my shop's only 725 square feet, so it's not huge by any means. But went from doing custom blades to then contracting out larger knife companies to do some production runs for me, dealing with all the pains that come from that, the quality control issues,
Yep.
and deciding that I just have to do it myself, investing in CNC machinery, taking classes on how to program the machines, and just snowball effect, year after year. All of a sudden now it's, turned into a legitimate business. So, and yeah, I mean, it's just totally organic. Never intended to make a business by any means. The only thing was that I just had a passion for it and I loved it. Um, you know, making knives is really expensive. So if you're going to start doing it, you eventually have to sell them, um, because you're going to have to pay for better gear and materials and stuff.
Yeah, for sure. I'm going to circle back to the knives for sure, because
Yeah,
you
yeah.
do some great things, and I'm going to circle back what you said with the um, maybe the retired military and law enforcement. But I want to progress a little bit because I get to know a guy on the show, get to know a guest organically. You've had to learn business. You had to learn, as you said, figure out how to make a website. Lucky enough, actually, I'm wearing this shirt. I'm not sponsored by this. This is a veteran-owned business, Warfighter Athletic from New Zealand. One of my commando buddies there, he did the same thing, but he literally typed into Google, "How do you make a website?" And he was the same thing. He bootstrapped
Yeah.
the whole thing. So what was that like? Because you're obviously creative. You enjoyed making blades and so on, but you had to learn other skills. How did you figure out how to do that? And then what sort of drove you there?
Sure. So it was all trial and error. I did, in college, my degree was in economics. So I had some business classes. What the way I like to think of it is the only class from college that I feel like helped me was basic accounting classes,
Yeah,
which helped when it came time to like do my taxes. And even then, like I always like to tell a story of my first year in business, like official business, had we made $30,000 in sales throughout the whole year. And I didn't know what a write-off was at all. Someone I just filed my taxes and then I owed them $10,000, but I had about $2,000 left over at the time. So, because there's no one tells you, unless you actively seek this information out, no one tells you this information.
yeah,
And so there's just so much stuff I had to learn, whether it's accounting, taxes, web design, social media, just all sorts of things. There's so many moving parts. And it really was just kind of trial and error. There was no, um, the school of hard knocks, basically.
yeah.
Um,
No
luckily,
mentor
I
training or
have,
anything.
yeah, yeah. Luckily, I have, all of my family members like own their own business more or less. So I had a lot of resources there. But there was really, yeah, there's no structure at all. And I still feel like I'm learning stuff kind of every day as I go about this. So, um, yeah, there was a lot to learn for sure.
And back then, even
But
making a website, you had to be a nerd of some kind rather than crayon eating guy over here just doing drag and drop with some things onto a commercial platform. It's a lot easier now, but back then it would have been quite a tricky thing to learn that new skill set when really what you enjoy is making blades.
for sure, yeah. The website stuff, yeah, it definitely. I was using BigCommerce when I first started, and it was good, but it wasn't. There was a lot of like issues with my first websites, and Shopify is what I use now. It's way easier, but I'm actually switching back to BigCommerce now because Shopify just demonetized or took away my ability to use their credit card processing because knives are dangerous and scary to them. Um,
No way.
so yeah, they recently slapped me with that. So they all my like express checkout, all that was taken off. And I had to use now like a third party plugin to still use them, but they
Yeah.
take 2% of everything you make on top of that, on top of whatever the other credit card. So now it's like they're taking 5% of everything I make. So I'm kind of going back to BigCommerce now.
Let's dive
So
down on
hopefully
that
they've
though,
made it
Yanni.
easier.
Let's dive down on that with what you're saying with Shopify. I mean, I could understand at least an argument, say with guns. I could understand an argument with other products, but is there a way to communicate with that platform and literally argue your case, or is that are they just they're like a YouTube, they're the arbiter, and that's what they're saying?
Yeah. So I haven't attempted to argue it yet, and I've kind of thought about that. Um, you know, their argument was basically that, I'm selling dangerous weapons, daggers and such. And my argument to them would be like, well, most of my clients are law enforcement, military. These are going to the people who are serving and protecting us.
Yeah.
And if you look up, they said kitchen knives are okay to sell, but if you look up FBI statistics, number one murder weapon that's with a blade is like a kitchen knife.
100%.
So
I was a cop. It was I saw the same thing.
yeah, yeah, heated passion, and usually it's like domestic, right? So,
Yeah.
um, but I don't think people want to hear that because it's one of those things that like a lot of people don't want to hear facts. So, I might try to argue that point to them, but I don't think it's just going to become on deaf ears and not be worth my time. And at the end of the day, a company that is, let's call it anti Second Amendment or weapon or defense, whatever you want to say, like that is at the end of the day their sentiment. And I'd rather take my money somewhere else. And I've heard like from watching a podcast with Mike Glover from Fieldcraft
Yeah,
Defense.
yeah, I know Mike.
He
Yeah.
had an issue with Shopify, and he said that Big Commerce like welcomed them on. They're Texas based, and so I'd rather just bring my money and support a business that way than try to argue with Shopify because, at any time, Shopify can, as going into election year, if things get worse between, political tensions and Shopify wants to crack down more, they can just change their terms of service anytime and say they don't want you selling any knives on their platform, regardless of credit card processor or not. So
Yeah.
I'd rather be preemptive, switch back to big commerce,
Yeah.
and I'll let you know soon if they're more easy to use now than they were 10 years ago. But I'm actually now luckily I'm at a point where I'm just paying someone to do it for me.
Yeah.
So I'm having someone build it out rather than messing around with it myself.
And it's not, websites aren't really that complex. Really, it's just a storefront. But I'm really glad you did explain that. And it's intriguing for us here on the other side of the world how I was talking with Arias Sorbonne this morning of Snakestaff Systems. It's just so polarized over in your space at the moment. And I do see the media pitting one side against each other, and the people in the middle make all the money. But what a clever decision you've got there, Yanni, to go to a place to be preemptive and not have your business dependent on the whims of harkening back to Twitter with their content moderators or whoever it is, somebody thinking this is the truth. So very clever idea going forwards. And it's just, I'd have to sum that up in saying it's a bit sad to see that, because that's not, in my mind, it's very simply, it's not fair at all, but very clever that
Yeah.
and you're also speaking with your wallet, which I think so many people should do and have done. I think they did it. I didn't know the show was going to go this way, but I think they did it with Bud Light and is it Target over
Yeah.
there and things. You can really make a difference with your wallet on these guys.
For sure. Yeah. I've saw it. I saw another guy, Doughboy Blades is his name, and he got the exact same email I did, and the other day, and so I hooked him up, with the guy I'm using for credit cards and told him about BigCommerce and all this, and so I'm definitely going to use my voice. I want to say around, I think close to maybe 5,000 guys in my following that are knife makers, and I'm letting people know that they should do the same and just be preemptive because at the end of the day, it's your business. It's the day they turned mine off was a Friday that I happened to not have a drop. I usually sell my products on Fridays, but if they did that a few weeks before, I had my biggest drop of the year. It was a new model release, and they could have turned me off on that day. And I spent 2 months building up inventory and sending out emails and getting my, customers ready for this big sale. So if they pulled the plug on me that day or a day like that, it would be catastrophic for my business. So, like any kind of self-defense or anything, you need to protect yourself financially, in a bunch of other different ways, because most likely those are the ways you're going to be attacked, rather than just out in the streets if, you're an average Joe per se,
Oh,
or someone like
yes.
myself. Like, yeah.
Hell yes.
So
I interviewed someone about that. It's keeping. Actually, maybe it was just the other day. We're talking about EDC with one of the guests, and in my EDC with my wallet, both my credit cards are in just tiny little RFID envelopes. And I know they work because when I go to do
Yeah.
PayPass, if I don't take it out of the wallet, it doesn't zap, and if I do, it does. That's pretty clever, I think, for paying $1 for this little envelope, and that just takes the that threat away. It's better to have it and not need it than need and not have it. So getting ahead both in your business and your platforms, and even the person that makes your website, making sure you have some ownership of that is very clever. I'm glad we spoke about that with business as well.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Yeah, you definitely have to protect yourself in kind of all realms. So
Now,
nice.
let's roll back to knives because you make some amazing
Sure.
blades. The shapes of them are really cool. They're different uses. Um, let's start at the start. Not many people know I used to be a blacksmith. My,
Nice.
my first job, I was a blacksmith. We made leaf springs, which for the listeners are springs that go into your car, not the coil springs. And there's four of us in the foundry, and we use spring steel and things, but very different. What I did, I was like a monkey really with a bunch of big steel. You do some beautiful work. So what's the sort of process? Is it just yourself making them, and what sort of steel are you using, and then what is the finished product that you're making in the range of knives?
Um, yeah, so my process, it's changed a lot over the years. I started as a full custom maker, cutting things out by hand, grinding it, doing all that. And then I did that for about 7 years. Right now, my process is a combination of using CNC machinery and handwork. And basically, the reason that I think that my knives come out so well is because I have the knowledge. I've been a custom knife maker, so I know how to make those blades. So I just transfer kind of what I do by hand to machine, and I'm able to replicate my work on kind of a larger scale.
Yep.
Um, right now, I work with primarily crucible industry steels. So CPM 3V and then CPM MagnaCut is the newest one I've been using. It's the hot steel that everyone likes, and the hype on it is definitely real because I put it through some practical testing um, not too long ago, and the performance was just insane. Like I was able to easily baton through wood and
That is annoying. Is it 21? Hey, you're
all
back.
right, we're back.
So you're
All right,
talking.
sorry about I don't know what
Just before
happened.
that's okay. Just before we dropped out, you're talking about batoning through wood with that steel.
Sure. Yeah. So I was able to, I had a new knife design called the Copperhead the other day. I actually have some right here.
Yeah, awesome.
Might as well show it because we're
Your designs
right
are
here.
they're
This
really aesthetic, but they also look so practical.
so this one has Ultim handles with clear kydex. It's kind of just a flashier one. It's just the closest one near me. But
Beautiful.
yeah, so this knife, it's 0.15 inches thick. So it's not a super thick blade, and it has the thinnest edge out of any knife I've ever designed. Incredibly sharp. And I wanted to make sure that I wasn't going to have any failures or anything. So I was with this design, batoning through wood, cracked through a few 2x4s, then sunk it through the tip of a few pennies, and then was still just shaving paper and popping hair.
Really?
Like, and yeah, I mean, the MagnaCut steel really does hold up well. And obviously the heat treat's a huge part of that.
Yeah.
And I send all my stuff out to a professional heat treat facility that I personally have toured, and I actually know the owner from high school, so they take extra good care of me.
Awesome.
Um, but yeah, so I'm using CNC machinery to basically do full machining on the blades. Um, I use a CNC router to machine out all the handles, and then I make my own molds so that I can rapidly form and cut out and make sheaths quite easily, because I don't know if you made any sheaths back when you were making blades, but that's everyone's least favorite part. And it's something like, 5 minutes per sheath is my production time.
Wow.
And I make, four at a time. So it's a 20-minute cycle from raw material to finished sheath, and they have the perfect snap.
Yeah.
There's no play, nothing like that. So I
Wow.
take a lot of time in designing, building out my designs, and constantly tweaking my files and making everything more streamlined, and just getting, my goal is just make better blades faster. That's what I'm trying to do.
I love the
Make them
I love the
faster, make
bit
them better.
I love the bit you said there, make better blades faster.
Better,
Um,
yes.
I, so I've never made a knife. I made huge springs for cars and fire trucks. But I did make a sheath once from some Kydex, and that was tricky. There was
Okay.
one draft, and then there was one that I had to tweak around with. But your sheath looks slick, and it's interesting because I interviewed Daniel Winkler on, he's a master bladesmith, great on the blades, and then it's no longer leather. He literally transitioned through to making Kydex sheaths as well. So he had to learn a new skill set there. So it's really interesting watching a younger person, a younger generation of yourself, Yoni, coming through, and you've streamlined making that Kydex sheath as well.
Yeah, and maybe I have a cool video I can you can link to if you want, where it
Yeah.
shows my Kydex process start to finish, as well as my blade process start to finish, so people can see if they want kind of how it's done. Because I haven't created any new technology per se. I'm just doing what a lot of the bigger companies do, but I'm on a small scale. And there's no communication between maker and engineers or anything like that. I do it all myself, so I'm able to get the best fitting product that I can. um, because if designing the sheath mold is taking an extra day or two, and at any other company that would be putting it over budget, and maybe it's working fine, maybe there's a little bit of wiggle here, but whatever, it's still good. Like for
No.
me, I can just say, nah, it's cool, I'll put another day. What's one more day? I'm gonna make thousands of these things, I better get it right. So yeah, I really care about my product. And also, as a one-man shop, if I didn't make a good product, I would be spending way too much time fixing knives that are already out there.
Yeah.
And on average, I maybe get back 5 knives a year for repairs. So
Wow.
um you just build it right the first time, and that's, you don't have to mess with it again.
An old
So
instructor an old SAS instructor that taught us in the commandos, he used to say it to us, just do it once, do it right. And he said that under some pretty harsh conditions, Yoni, and we just
I'm
didn't.
sure.
We learned not to make those
Yeah,
mistakes.
I'm sure that that's definitely much more high stakes than what I'm doing. Um, Although sometimes, guys in your position are using my products. So at the same time, there's definitely some of that trickle down to me. The responsibility of knowing, I've had times where, like, when I would do my own heat treat myself or something, and I was like, oh man, I forgot to take the knives out. And I'm like, now it's trash. Like, got to toss them, because you don't know whose hands this is going to end up in. And if there's an issue with that blade and it comes back on you, that would just be terrible. So
Yeah.
always have to
That
make sure that.
that's a perfect segue to go back to the steel and what you do. Um, Back in my day when I first, as a kid, 440C stainless steel. That was it. That was the be all,
Yeah,
440
yeah.
surgical stainless steel. You talked about this Magna Cut steel, and I know, and I only know a little bit about steels. I'm not that sort of a guy. I'm an end user guy. I want the thing to do what you said. I want to be able to do the things and then shave the hair. I needed to work under those conditions. So Daniel Winkler uses a very strong steel. The other guys, I've been sent a knife that goes through a penny, like goes through a quarter, which is awesome, like you did. Um, what's it like to sharpen, and what are the qualities of this Magna Cut steel you're now using? And I guess that would end up with the answer to why choosing that.
Um, yeah, so for me, sharpening is very simple, but I'm doing it on a belt grinder.
Yeah.
Um, so to be quite honest, I don't do any kind of stone sharpening. So for the end user, um, from what I've heard, it's fairly simple to resharpen. Um, MagnaCut was designed by this guy. His name is Dr. Laren Thomas, I believe. And his Instagram handle is Knife Steel Nerds, and this dude was literally a PhD who just is super into knife steels and designed this steel to
Yeah.
be sort of this super steel. And kind of how I nerd out on making knives, this dude nerds out on the steel.
Wow.
So I don't have a huge amount of, let's say, research myself into the chemical compositions and all that. I don't necessarily pay too much attention to that stuff. I look, because that's not how my brain works. I look
No.
more at the practical. Does it work? What are people saying? Okay, let's get some.
Yeah.
Let's work with it and then test it, of course. Um, but the way the properties work on the end user would be increased edge retention and completely stainless. One of the highest like stainless ratings. The way they do that is basically spraying it with a salt water solution,
Yeah.
and it has uh, just really good reaction to or lack of reaction to that. And the way I do things is from a practical standpoint. So I test it against other steels and see how it stands up. And I use CPM 3V as well, which is the same company. But even just my steel sitting around in a case before I even touch it, I mean the 3V will start to get some rust on it here and there, which is mainly why I Cerakote it to protect against that. But the MagnaCut just sitting on a pallet, no issues with the rust, even before it's hardened. And most steels, they don't really get their stainless properties fully until they've been hardened. So, the fact that it's so stain resistant and holds such a great edge is what makes it, a great steel to work with. And my only the only thing I was not the only reason I wasn't attracted to it at first was because on paper, compared to the 3V, it's not as tough.
Right.
And people like that toughness, but paper and chart, they're one thing, right? And then practical is another thing. So it's
Yeah.
kind of like comparing, let's say, two different calibers of a bullet, like
On
you're
paper.
at the end of the day, you're comparing bullets. So it's something that's, gonna it's gonna go through you. You don't want to get shot by it either way. It's gonna, it's a powerful force no matter what. So, on paper, one would be stronger than the other, but in reality, in physical testing, when you're putting it through its paces, it's still incredibly strong. It's hardened steel.
Yeah.
So, you know, after I got to work with it for a while and use it enough, I was super impressed with it. And felt that that lack of quote unquote like strength was it wasn't causing any practical issues with that steel. It was still plenty strong for what it needed to do as a knife.
And that's how I first came across Winkler. I've mentioned his name a couple of times because he's got a video of him punching it through a car bonnet in the backyard, sort of thing. And when a former special missions unit guy who made some knives, he sent me one. He showed me the photo of it going through the quarter. Those sort of real tests, they garner attention and they show authenticity as well. So you saying, after you battened it, you smash it through the penny, and then you're still shaving here and cutting paper. That's the real world. That's what we want to hear as exactly.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I always like to do, some practical tests, and there's obviously only so much you can do. And every individual knife is going to be different, but definitely putting it through its paces and doing things that it's hopefully not going to need to do in order to make sure that it's going to work. when you need it.
And of course, guys like us, I mean, Dom Rasso from Dynamis Alliance, um, he he's sort of famous famous for saying, you know, his knife he used it for prying and method of entry more than he used for, you know, taking another person out, as it were. And we use it for so many
For
different
sure, yeah.
tools because it's a tool. A knife is a knife. It's not there.
Yeah,
Unfortunately, what Shopify said, it's not there as a dangerous thing. That's like saying you can't advertise motor cars because they'll kill more people than a blade will, you know.
for sure, yeah. Yeah, no, they are tools, and they have to be able to do things like when I was actually designing my first folding knife, I going on the pivot, inside of the pivot, some people use like little bearings
Yep.
that help assist the blade open, and some people use like washers, and the washers are maybe not as fast or smooth as the bearings, but when I was deciding on that, some of the conversations with people I was having was, if you pry with this at all on bearings, the bearings can kind of match into each other and it'll lock up the action. Whereas with washers, it's going to stay smooth. You'll be able to kind of pry with it. And, I was talking to law enforcement guys, and they were saying like, yeah, we want to be able to fold it open, stab into something, pry it when we're, executing a search warrant or something, or, worst case scenario, entry tool or even exit tool of some sort. They're like, we would rather have it maybe not open as lightning quick for the Instagram video, but it's still going to open, and it's going to be, nice and durable when it does. Um, so yeah, learning, my designs were kind of based a lot around realizing that these aren't going to be just combat, self-defense knives, because yeah, in most cases you're going to end up using this for a lot of other things first. Most guys will hopefully never have to use it in that situation. From what I've been told, if you're down to your blade, like something went really wrong.
Oh yeah.
So
Yeah, 100%. But you never know what goes down, and
for
those are
sure.
the tools that we use for different times. I'll come back to the sharpening, but you mentioned design, so I want to cover up on that. Your designs are slick. I said at the start, you've come in with a positivity straight away from your photos and your Instagram and so on, but somehow I don't know what you got. You got an X factor on your blades, and I am a blade guy. I've interviewed the guys, and I've seen a lot of things. There's an X factor to your designs, even to the one you showed there. What a cool handle. I mean, a see-through sheath, never seen that before. Even the sheath uh, contours are really pretty. So there's something about it. So talk us about the design of your knives. I mean, I've done on the website
Sure.
prior to the interview. You've got some nice double-edged ones coming out now. Very different designs. What inspires you to those? Is it efficacy? Is it from on the ground? Hey, I need this. What gets you onto those sort of shapes, and what are they for?
Yeah. So I mean, the way I do my designs, I'm trying to think what the best way to put this, but basically design was just, I guess, a natural gift and ability, you could say. My designs are a direct, basically it's 10 years of getting, improvement, right?
Yeah.
I've had the same designs. My flagship model is the Vendetta, and that was one of my first knife designs I ever did. Um, you know, so I don't know really what happened 10 years ago, what got me to just have these designs, but they somehow came out. And then for 10 years, I've just been tweaking, a small thing there, small thing there, and making them just the slickest version possible of what they could be. Um, so I think, it's natural ability for some reason. It's just something that I have in terms of getting that kind of like X factor, if you will. But the reason that they all have that look where like just the profiles and everything is nice is because most of the designs you see are close to 10 years old, and they've been tweaked a bunch. I could show you those same knives from 10 years ago, and they don't look as good. It'll be a similar shape, but
Yeah.
it's not this tight, like just well thought out design. And that's basically happened when I switched, to using CNC machinery, because you're doing it in a computer. So
Yeah.
every little line, you don't like that line, you just tweak it just a little bit. And you can do that as many times as you want. And I will, basically cut out just a rough profile on like a piece of scrap G10 or something soft that I can cut fast. And I'll make 5 or 6 of the same designs with slight tweaks, right? And cut all of them out, feel all of them in hand. I like this, I don't like that, and mix them and keep just getting everything until it's just a perfect profile shape. And that's really all it is. It's just snowballing. I'm constantly tweaking stuff, changing it, and making it better.
Awesome. Awesome. So just before you dropped out, you're saying you're constantly tweaking stuff and making it better. Do you also get any end user feedback, Yanni?
Yeah, I do get end user feedback for the most part, but it's usually not about the design itself so much about maybe like a feature overall. Like, if some people will say like, oh, the handles just need to be a little bit thicker, or like, blade should be a little thinner, not so much the design. The feedback I get, usually if I get it at all in terms of design, is from someone who, let's say this, when I do a bunch of blades for SEAL teams or something, no feedback. They're like, we love them, they're great. If I do a blade for a guy if I click on the message and look at his thing and it's just some dude who every other picture is, like partying and smoking weed or whatever, and this guy will write me an essay on need a millimeter here different and this and that and this. So
we call them wannabes, Yanni,
it's,
and my word, we call them wannabes.
okay, so that's, to be quite honest, most of the feedback I get is from someone who, and I don't know, maybe they have some other experience, I don't know, but I can just, from what I see, it's not someone that is necessarily, tip of the spear per se. Whereas when I do work with, kind of like elite communities and individuals, when they give me feedback, I do implement that. One thing I will say, like, I'll just grab a couple knives and I'll show you like a couple small things that I've learned over the years. All right. So I'll talk about some like feedback that I've gotten over the years on blades that has gone directly into my design. So the one I just showed you, it does have a kind of a large sharpening choil in it, but this one does not have any sharpening choil down here.
Yeah.
And that was direct feedback from some guys that took out a prototype knife overseas and got hands-on with it, and it had a little sharpening choil, and they said, we don't like that. That is getting caught on people's clothing and zippers when we're using it in a defensive situation.
Yeah.
So for all of my purely like combative style blades, I took out the sharpening choil. Then I used to do a lot of like glass breakers on the end. People call them skull crushers and all that stuff. Guys would say, hey, two things. One, when we're carrying it on our hip, it's mainly just rubbing on our own forearms, sticking into us. And they go, and if you're striking down with someone and you want to power assist into it, now you're just stabbing into your own hand. They're like, we don't need to break glass, necessarily. If we want a more functional blade. So I took I had skull crushers on a lot of knives, 8 years ago, took all that stuff out, sharpening choils on the purely combative style blades, took those out, things like that, feedback like that, I 100% implement. And, like I said, like this knife, it does have the sharpening choil, but this one is more not necessarily a pure kind of combative blade. This one is just, this one's a little bit more stylistic, let's say. And, it's, for me, this is like a heritage model, meaning like I made this model a long time ago and it had the choil, and I left it just because some people still want it. Not everyone's buying these to carry on a mission or something, and some
Exactly.
people like them. So you got to have diversity in your product line, and I think it fits this shape really well.
I
But
agree.
yeah,
I
those two
agree.
features on like purely combative style blade, those are two things that direct feedback went into from people that were operational, telling me what they wanted, and changes were made. So
And maybe I didn't ask that
100% end
question.
user feedback.
Maybe I didn't ask that question as well as I could have, but it got a great answer. So to finish off more rounded, well-rounded on that, I interviewed at the other end of the day today, first thing in the morning, I was interviewing a guy who makes really the best Tourniquets in the world. So he's getting feedback on those, literally about saving lives. You had some great feedback there from guys, downrange. Do you get other feedback about your knives, just in general, about how they've saved lives, help them do their job better, what they've used them for? I mean, one pry bar I've got that Chris Stroop made, I literally used that to get a guy. I'm a fireman now, to get a guy out of his bathroom. He's locked in his own bathroom, so we used that for that. So what a great little thing. But do you get much feedback from what your blades are used for as well?
I used to get a lot more. I don't so much these days. I don't know if necessarily if it's just people aren't communicating as much, but
Yeah.
I used to get quite a bit. I mean, I've definitely heard stories. People were saying, "Oh, trapped in a car, cut the seatbelt, and was able to like kind of pry open um,
Awesome.
a damaged door, things like that." I've had quite a few things. Some people that have been attacked in the streets and used it in a self defense situation, and they're like, it worked well. And then when the cops came, they said, "This is a cool blade," and they asked for your information. And they're like, and they let me keep. They didn't confiscate it. So I've definitely gotten some feedback um over the years, but it seems that people aren't as talkative, I guess, as they used to be. And maybe that's because when I was first starting, I was a lot more on camera, I guess, posting
Right.
a lot more stories, and I would was just talking more, and
More
now I'm
interaction.
more kind of like secluded from it. I don't put myself out there as much. um I think that's just part of like getting older and deciding like, like, I don't need to, I thought I was some kind of little micro influencer or something back, when I was first starting. Whereas now I'm just like, I'm just a dude that makes knives, so I'll just focus on the knives. Um, but people still definitely give me some feedback, just not as much as it used to. But I think whenever something big happens, people let me know.
Cool.
I think also a lot of my customers don't even realize I'm a one man shop. I know that I appear to
Yeah.
be kind of a bigger business, and so they're probably like, "Oh, I'm not gonna send messages out to some corporation or something," but in reality, it all comes directly to me. So, um,
I love that.
yeah,
Um,
if anyone's
it's really good to see your success there and hearing the big orders to units and so on. I just want to go back to the sharpening, and then we can tie the show off.
sure.
Um, uh, I've found it difficult with these modern knives to sharpen them. I use the workshop sharpeners, and in general, it would be nice to get the degree that the manufacturer yourself had it sharpened at, what angles you're sharpening at. Um, like with Winkler, great blades, but it's almost like magic trying to find the right angle. And some people have figured it out, but I think they'll be really clever to know. So, do you have a set angle for all your knives, or are they all different ones? Do they vary?
So I sharpen everything at 25 degrees, and it's a legit 25 degrees. Um, I think the issue that you're referring to with other blades is because a lot of guys they sharpen by hand, meaning like they're holding the blade at the angle over their grinder, and no one we're not robots. We can't keep a consistent steady angle just holding
Right.
it by hand. Um, I built out a custom grinder setup for myself. And people, I have tons of videos of it online. So my angles are mechanically locked in at 25 degrees when I'm sharpening.
Wow.
And I check that, I calibrate that angle consistently, which makes resharpening fairly easy for people. Um, are you referring to the work sharp, the one that's the like the little belt grinder, or the stone kind of
I
system?
use the workshop that has a manual angle adjustment. So you run it along the blade. It's expensive. It's
Mhm.
a big thing for me to go out and purchase, but really good. And then just as I bought that, they bought out one. It's actually got a digital angle measurer on it now, which looks really clever.
Oh,
So you can set
nice.
that each time. I think that's probably what's the most expensive, but it's definitely the best sharpener I've used. But for me to get that right without having to re-profile the blade, it would be super handy for me when I get your blade. Now I know it's 25 degrees, so that's what I sharpen it at. And I think that's just a great
Yeah.
thing for everybody buying a knife because they can get it back to what it was in the factory with a really good sharpener in that right way.
Yeah, no, I just lock it in there at 25 degrees, which is it's a great overall angle for a tactical utility knife. It's going to be sharp, it'll, hair pop and sharp, but also not too thin of an edge that it's gonna, you're gonna worry about chipping or anything like that, from any kind of normal use. Um, but the main for me, the main thing would that a lot of people overlook too is just stropping your knife,
Yes,
on a leather
yes,
strop, because no matter how good your angled kind of system is, I think actually, a lot of the time your knife probably doesn't even need to be resharpened. It just needs to be stropped. And so what I recommend to people is you can get a little like 1 by 30, they're called, grinder from, in the US. We have a store called Harbor Freight. It's a $40 little belt grinder thing, small, and you can get a 1 by 30 leather belt. I use TrueGrit.com. They'll sell you that little leather belt and some green stropping compound,
yep.
and it's just going to run a piece of leather really fast on this little grinder. And in most cases, that's probably all you're going to need, and unless there's some deformation at your edge. um, but that power stropping with that green compound is and not just manually stropping on other, I'm talking like just drag it across like that. The leather is going to conform to your edge shape because it's soft, and it's going to just polish it up and knock off any burrs, and that's how you get it razor sharp. um like when I sharpen, even my final grit that I take that edge to before I strop it, if I go to cut myself, like it does really nothing. It's not doing, it's the leather is what is going to pop off those kind of like micro burrs and make it sharp. And so, I think for an end user, even if you have like a little stone system, you can get, Lansky makes it $40, and it, holds your blade and that holds the stones at the angles.
Yep.
You can get small systems like that for $40, and then a $40 little belt grinder setup. And for $80, you're going to be making those knives incredibly sharp, really fast.
Oh
And
man.
I think that's important for people to know, especially, yeah, if you have a large collection, or if you're an end user and you need to keep those blades sharp. Obviously not great for, in the field, but if you're, if you have the time and setup, that leather is going to be really where it's at.
Hell yeah. Oh, Yanni, that's just pure gold. Like that 3, 4 minutes there. What a wondrous thing for knife guys. And I don't say that lightly, and I don't blow smoke because you're the guy in the business for 10 years, and you've literally given that secret sauce that was normal to you. Stropping the knife by hand, I do that to mirror that finish up, and it makes all the difference. But so clever what you said there with that little leather belt tool, and using that. And it is so true. And I used to think you have to go back and reprofile that blade. I don't know much about sharpening. I'm going back to sharpening stones and so on. So that's really, really cool to use it leather strop. And yeah, thank you. I'm going to go to True Grit myself, and get one of those sent over.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. They're great. Yeah. Learning to sharpen was a huge pain for me. So, um, and it's one of those skills that if no matter how everything else on your knife could be perfect, but if someone opens that box and they take it out and it's dull, there's nothing more disappointing.
No,
I
you just
mean,
got to understand.
if I was a customer, I'd go like, what else is wrong with the blade? What can I not see that's wrong with it? So,
Yeah.
um, yeah, it's sharpening is a skill, but the system I've built, I like to say that I can get anyone to make a knife sharp. It might not be pretty, but it will be sharp. So, you know, takes years to get it so it looks good and is sharp, but just getting it sharp with my system, locks your angle in, and using that power strop, and every time razor sharp. So
Awesome. I'm all over it. Look, thank you so much. It's been a real insight at how you're doing it. Like I said in the middle of the show, the new generation coming through. It's really interesting and really intriguing to see. Just slick, man. Your stuff's slick, which is cool.
thank
As I
you.
said, they hear the show notes at the start, but at this stage, you know, where do they find you? Where do they go to buy your knives?
Sure. So my website is just the knife, the brand names, complianceedgeknives.com. And typically I do what's called drops on Fridays at it's 5 p.m. Pacific time. So whatever I make during the week, I upload to my website at that time. Um, Sometimes they sell out right away. Sometimes they're up for a few days. That I don't control it, but that's where where you go to buy them. Social media, I'm on Instagram is the main one that I focus on at compliance_edge. You can give me a follow there. Also on TikTok now, because all the kids are doing it, and it's the next thing, unfortunately. And then Facebook as well, just Compliance Edge Knives. So people can find me there, and on my website I got my personal email and my cell phone numbers up there, so if people ever have questions or anything, want to know more, I'm always here to chat, help people out. I love talking and giving back to the community, and talking with my customers and getting to know people and creating personal relationships with them. So
Awesome. So, I'll put all those links in the show notes. That you've heard that in the intro for the listeners and viewers. 2024, I've got a question that I ask every guest I'm going to finish on. And
sure.
the context for this question is, we wouldn't be where we are right now without the experience that we had. But what advice would you give to your younger self, Yoni?
Sure. So well, my advice to my younger self would just be buy Bitcoin in high school and retire, but I can't do that. So my advice to my younger self would be to automate faster. So get into CNC machining faster, because I waited for 7 years. And that pretty much would have been it. Actually, to pay more attention from the business side to like track track spending more wisely, let's say.
Okay. Clever.
Those were probably the two main things that I wish I was more aware of when I was first starting my knife making journey. So
Awesome.
yeah, that would pretty much be it as it relates to what I do. I've had everything else, it's just a learning process. I don't wish I did anything else differently in terms of this career path.
Oh, cool. And
So
that's kind of sums up how I'm sort of contextualizing you is slick. You're slicking up your processes. That advice you give to younger self, same thing. It's going to slicken things up there. Yoni, I can't wait to get one of your knives in hand. It's going to be really cool. Love what you do there. Thank you so much for making the time to come on. I know I reached out to you on Instagram. You're very kind to reply, and it's just great to share your journey with others. And yeah, it's been an absolute honor having a chat.
awesome. Thank you so much for having me on. Yeah. It's been a pleasure chatting with you. It was great.
Hi, thanks for watching. I'm Damien Porter, former New Zealand Special Forces operator and former Australian police officer, and your podcast host. Please check out my new project at hownottodieguy.com, where I teach everything you need to know to both males and females, at-risk populations, schools, kids, and the elderly for self-defense, situational awareness, and all-round skills that every good person should know. Thanks for watching.